What is theory for? What are the functions of theory? Why should we care about theory? With ever-increasing data and evidence generated from sophisticated measurements and data analysis, why not let data speak for themselves without a theory or theoretical framework? In this video, I introduce 3 functions of theories. The first function of theory is to generate predictions. A good theory is a guide to generating predictions. Kurt Lewin was considered the father of social psychology. Lewin said, "There is nothing as practical as a theory." A good theory is analogous to a shining hammer. Once you become a convert of a theory, you use the theory as a hammer in your search of nails. In 1869, Dmitry Mendeleev made a presentation to the Russian Chemical Society in which he stated his periodic law, which states that when elements are ordered according to their atomic weights, certain properties of elements repeat periodically. With the periodic law, Mendeleev left gaps in his periodic table for elements which were not yet discovered, and predicted the properties of those elements. The periodic table gained acceptance in the scientific community in the following 2 decades as 3 elements were discovered with properties closely matching what Mendeleev had predicted. The Higgs boson, also known as the God particle in the mainstream media, was predicted by Higgs mechanism theory. In 1964, Peter Higgs, along with 5 other physicists, proposed the Higgs mechanism theory and predicted that a spineless particle should exist with certain properties, such as a massive scalar boson with 0 spin, no electric charge, no color charge, being very unstable and decaying into other particles almost immediately. In 2012, a subatomic particle with the predicted properties was discovered by scientists at the European Organization for Nuclear Research near Geneva. Take role theory as an example. The role theory postulates that an individual's role can be used to predict their decisions. Your role as a school principal implies a pattern of behavior that comes from how you make your decisions. According to the role theory, presented with the same data and evidence, you make different decisions when your role is a principal and when your role is a teacher. One more example is approach inhibition theory of power. Dan Keltner and his team proposed the approach inhibition theory to explain power. They argue that elevated power activated the behavioral approach system, which regulated behavior associated with rewards and freedom. Lower power activated the behavioral inhibition system, which regulated behavior in response to threats and punishments. According to approach and inhibition theory of power, you can predict that power holders are more likely than those without power to pay attention to rewards, which leads to self-serving behavior by developing a sense of entitlement and pursuing rewards and goals. You can also predict that elevated power is associated with increased freedom, less self-control, and stronger reliance on personal inclinations. All of those effects undermine leaders' capability to make quality decisions in organization. A good theory is a guide to generating predictions. This doesn't mean all theories can guide you to generate predictions. A good theory is a guide to generating predictions. This is because some theories are too broad to derive meaningful predictions. Take a contingency theory of leadership as an example. It has been criticized that the theory was too broad to be practical when contingency was reduced to a vague allusion. Donald Willower asked whether contingency is a theory in the first place. Put another way, is contingency theory a set of related concepts and generalizations that serve to explain, or is it a broad injunction to focus on the complexity of relationship and the contingency that affect them? The contingency theory provides an inkling of an explanation for leadership that researchers intuitively know it exists, but couldn't articulate very well. Theorists with their arguments can see far deeper into the abyss of a phenomenon that methodologists with their instruments could possibly hope to go. To handle the mind-boggling intricacies of leadership, you need something specific to help you derive a prediction for your research. If you can't use a theory to generate predictions for your research, it means the theory is not good enough. You need to either find another theory or think about how you can use your research to propose a better theory. The second function of theory is that theory is an anchor for data collection and analysis. Theory predicts. Research methods generate evidence. A theory is merely an idea until it has empirical evidence backing. An idea can gain a large following of devotees, but it is really when a theory's predictions are tested by empirical data that it becomes something more than an idea. A phenomenon you'd like to study is often too complex and varied to be explored at random. To study a phenomenon of your interest, it is too mentally demanding, if cognitively possible, to probe in all directions. Without a theory, how do you decide what would be observed? Imagine that you walk into an organization's office building to collect data on leadership. Without a theory, you would have no clue about where to look to collect the data, let alone analyze the data. It is theory that guides you as you explore constructs involved in the phenomenon and probe how those constructs behave. Theory forces you to put forward theoretical explanations and use logical reasoning. If you use strategic leadership as your guide, you collect data on leaders' ability to anticipate, envision, and maintain flexibility, think strategically, and work with others to initiate change. If you use servant leadership as your guide, you collect data on leaders seeing themselves as stewards of the organizations and leaders engaging followers in multiple dimensions, such as relational, ethical, emotional, and spiritual, such that they are empowered to grow into what they are capable of becoming. Both strategic leadership and servant leadership are ways to explain leadership. Grounded in different theoretical lenses of leadership, you collect and analyze different data. That's one of the beautiful things about theories. You can approach the same phenomenon in many different ways, each of which provides a different perspective and understanding. Moral foundations theory is an explanation for morality. It postulates that morality is comprised of 5 foundations: care or harm, fairness or cheating, loyalty or betrayal, authority or subversion, and sanctity and degradation. If you use moral foundations theory as a theoretical grounding of your research, you then collect data on leaders' 5 moral foundations. Specifically, you collect data on care. For example, whether a leader cares for someone who are weak or vulnerable. Fairness, for example, whether a leader treats others fairly. Loyalty, whether a leader did something to betray his or her group. Authority, whether a leader shows a lack of respect for authority. And sanctity, for example, whether a leader violates standards of purity and decency. Those 5 foundations of morality are the theoretical foundations of Moral Foundation Questionnaire, which can be used in your research to collect data on leaders' morality. You don't go into an office building to collect random data. Rather, your data collection and analysis are anchored by the Moral Foundations theory. Without a theory, your research methods, which include your data collection and analysis, are devoid of reasoning. In a field as interdisciplinary as educational leadership, theory is essential to empirical research. This is why every empirical article in the field of educational leadership is required to include a section of theoretical framework. After decades of development, educational leadership research addresses an ever broader set of issues in an ever-increasing diversity of settings and more deeply embedded in its interdisciplinary knowledge base, including psychology, sociology, social psychology, and economics. Given the interdisciplinary nature of the field of educational leadership, theory is more important than ever. Without an appropriate theory, you are flying blind. Theories are like an instrumental panel and a radar system that guide you where to go. Use theories as your navigation tools in a complex world. The third function of theory is that theory is a signpost waiting to be proven wrong. If you see the same theory often repeated in the literature, particularly in those publications written by towering intellectuals, you are perhaps unlikely to question it, but you should. No theory is perfect. To explain how the matter and energy in the universe were created, Fred Hoyle and his team proposed a steady-state theory. They argue that all the matter and energy in the universe were created in a slow, steady process that needed no moment of creation or, heaven forbid, destruction. From the moment Hoyle proposed the idea, astronomers were able to poke small holes in the steady-state theory, finding observations that sometimes did not attest to Hoyle's predictions derived from the theory. Those astronomers' observations were never enough to kill the theory outright, but the number of diehards shrank over time. Most cosmologists, including George Gamow, who tried to account for the origin of the chemical elements, believed the Big Bang theory, which posited that all the matter and energy in the universe was created an instantaneous fiery beginning, the Big Bang. In 1964, news broke of the discovery of cosmic microwave background. This discovery was never accepted by Hoyle as the evidence that the entire cosmos had a start date. The year 1990 saw the launch of the Hubble Space Telescope, the most capable orbiting telescope the world had yet seen. The Hubble allowed astronomers to look deep into the cosmos to see very faint and distant objects, offering evidence that is compatible with the Big Bang theory. Recently, the Hubble telescope was replaced by the James Webb Space Telescope, which was launched on December 25, 2021. The Webb telescope is expected to find the first galaxies that formed in the early universe, helping us understand the birth of the universe. In leadership literature, role theory suggests that an individual's role in an organization predicts his or her decisions and behavior. However, Such a prediction is sometimes inaccurate. One limitation of the role theory is that it doesn't take into account an individual's knowledge, desires, emotions, and personalities in the decision-making process. An individual can have high implicit power motivation, which is an unconscious motivation to impact others and enjoy being persuasive and asserting social influence. If so, people with high implicit power motivation are expected to be dominant in social settings, no matter what role they play in an organizational hierarchy. Unless other factors are taken into consideration, you commit an error when you use role theory to predict an organizational member's behavior. Trust has been a frequently used theoretical construct in educational leadership research. It refers to a psychological state comprising the intention to accept vulnerability based on positive expectations of the intentions or behavior of another. In an article titled 5 Phases of Trust, an Empirical Confirmation in Urban Elementary Schools, there were 5 dimensions of trust: benevolence, reliability, competence, honesty, and openness. However, if you examine trust in an organizational context, you find that trust is biased by social characterization. Leaders tend to promote those who are trustworthy by virtue of the membership in the right group, rather than those who are benevolent, reliable, competent, honest, and open. Leaders tend to reproduce themselves in kind. What's more, you come across another article titled Power Decreases Trust in Social Exchange. In this article, authors argue that having power did not increase but decrease how much trust was placed in others. It was argued that low-power people tend to perceive power holders in a positive light, even if little or no relevant information would support that perception, whereas power holders have little incentive to view low-power people in a better light than the objective information would justify. As a result, power holders tend to place less trust in low-power people. After reading the literature on how your social identity and power influence your trust in others, you may begin to think the 5 dimensions of trust may be too rational. This is how an irrational, motivated attribution model of trust development was proposed. A theory is a signpost that awaits to be proven wrong. Don't treat a theory as objective truth. I encourage you to use your research to refute or refine and develop theories, rather than just applying an existing theory to affirm the theory. Don't accept that all assumptions of the theories are correct. Challenge them, poke holes in them, argue against them, find evidence to substantiate your argument. Come up with your own theories. Share your theories with others. Allow your theories to be challenged by others. Defend your theories eloquently or clumsily. Ask thorny questions to challenge your own theories. Allow your theories to evolve as new evidence emerges. This is how you propel the theory development in educational leadership. In this video, I introduced 3 functions of theories. It is a guide to generating predictions. It is an anchor for data collection and analysis. It is a signpost waiting to be proven wrong. If you want to know more about how to build a theoretical framework for your research, I have published a book titled Demystify Theories, a workbook for developing theoretical frameworks of educational leadership research. The link of the book is in the description below.